Welcome to 20 Amateur Bowl's season prediction or season preview. We're just going to quickly go through our season predictions for this coming season. Division winners, seedings, MVP winners, that type of deal. So yeah, I think we're both really excited for this one, as it's going to be our last video, at least for a while, just because,
Yeah.
you know, stuff happens, life goes on.
Yeah, it does. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to go through our division winner predictions, our wild card predictions, and the teams we think will win the division. So I guess I'll go first then. So in my opinion, I think it's better as far as predictions go to pick teams that didn't win the division the year before to win the next year, just because things do change a lot. Like, for example, the Niners last year went from 3-13, 4-12 to the inverse of that and won the conference. So you got to kind of take that into account a little bit. So I'm gonna change some of those predictions. Although last year in the AFC the division winners stayed the exact same: Patriots, Ravens, Chiefs, and Texans. I don't think that's going to stay. I think a few of those teams are going to drop a little bit just because the tides of the teams and the power balance, especially in the AFC, are changing a little bit. So I'll start with the AFC North because I believe my Ravens are going to finish first in the AFC as a whole with a 13-3 record. That, of course, means they win the AFC North. It will be a tough division for sure, but I think the Ravens are head and shoulders above their competition. Honestly, last year I think I did too, really.
Fair.
But I'm not going to go into that. The AFC East, I believe, will go to the Buffalo Bills with a record roughly of 11-5. The Patriots were going to be really in on this before those opt-outs. The opt-outs really hurt them, and now I'm not really sure. I think the Bills are definitely a lot better than the rest of these teams in their division. I think this will probably be the least competitive division in the league, to be honest. And I think the Bills are just the Bills are just way better. The AFC West will be the most competitive division in the AFC just because there are 4 competitive teams in that division. No matter how you feel about the Chargers, their roster is quite good. Same with the Raiders. The Chiefs are the clear favorites, and I would have a lot of difficulty picking another team, especially
Chiefs division to lose.
Exactly. Even the Broncos, I think, as good as they are, I don't think they touch the Chiefs really. I have the Chiefs going around 12-4, maybe 13-3, but the game against the Ravens is in Baltimore, so the Ravens will probably win that and get the tiebreaker. Now, the AFC South is probably the most contested division, maybe in the league, definitely in the AFC, as to who's going to win it. My personal opinion, I don't think any team in this division is going above 10-6. I think it'll be just a really hard-fought division where they're going to have some really tough battles. In my opinion, the team that's going to win it is the Indianapolis Colts. I think they just have, I think they're the deeper team. I think they have a lot of good playmakers. They're really well coached. I'd have difficulty. I mean, the Texans and the Titans are really good, don't get me wrong, but I think the Colts, the way that they play football, if they can stay consistent with a quarterback that can be consistent in what he can do, the team will kind of look like the Saints a little bit, I think. So I really like what the Colts have done, and I think that they will surpass the other teams in their division, if by only one game or a very quick tiebreaker. Also, they have a slightly better schedule than the Texans and the Titans do, only by a little bit, but still. So that's my AFC. Simon, do you concur or do you disagree?
So I had the Ravens winning the North, as you mentioned, head and shoulders above everybody. Chiefs, I don't really need to talk about the Chiefs that much. They're stacked. The Buffalo Bills, again, probably the best team in their division, with the Patriots having so many opt-outs on that defense. And then the AFC South is really the only one where I differed. I have the Texans winning the division. Just with, again, that division is going to be so hard to call with the Titans now getting Jadeveon Clowney. Just that the Titans, Texans, and Colts are just going to be really fighting to win that division. It's going to be really close, I think. So, to me, it was actually between the Titans and the Texans. But again, with Deshaun Watson and just with J.J. Watt there in Houston, I just take Houston over the other two in the division.
Mhm. I think that's absolutely fair, and they have been the division winner in that division for the last few years for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They are a really tough team to beat. My only thing is that we have no idea what we're going to see out of
Yep.
the Texans this
That's
year.
exactly it. That's exactly it. So
Yeah.
they're a wild
So
card, but if they do well, they could potentially do very well. But at the same time, they could also tank. So.
absolutely. And speaking of wild cards,
Mm.
so again to reiterate, AFC East, Buffalo Bills 11-5, AFC North, Baltimore Ravens 13-3, winning the conference and
Mm-hmm.
winning the league. Actually, yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
win the league.
Yep.
AFC South is the Indianapolis Colts at 10-6, and the AFC West is going to the Chiefs at 12-4.
Right.
So, as far as my wildcard spots go, my first wildcard spot will go to the Houston Texans, the aforementioned Houston Texans,
Okay.
at a record also of 10-6. I think they will tie the Colts, if not 9-7. But I think roughly 10-6 is a good place to put the Houston Texans. They have that playoff pedigree. They have a lot of playmakers on both sides of the ball, and they've really handed the keys of the offense to Deshaun Watson. They're going to let him play. They gave him the bag. So I think this will be the year where he really shows us that he's a top 3 maybe quarterback in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. My second wildcard spot will go to the 10-6 Denver Broncos. I really like this roster a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Drew Lock doesn't pan out, this team will do just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the Pittsburgh Steelers won 8-8 last year with some of the worst quarterback play you could imagine.
Yep.
The Broncos will go at least 8-8.
Yep.
I see no other possibility for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the last wildcard spot was not easy to pick. It was not easy to pick, but I did go with the Tennessee Titans at 9-7. It's not the first time that 3 teams in the AFC West have been playoff teams in the last few years, and I don't think it'll be the last. The Tennessee Titans, especially with that pickup of Jadeveon Clowney, will make them a really tough team. Bend don't break, death by 1,000 cuts kind of team that really does make it far and really does have a grueling long season, but they make it even tougher on their opponents than their opponents make it on them. That's kind of the reason I have the Colts winning the division. I think the Colts match up really well with the Texans and the Titans, but the Texans and the Titans, great teams in their own rights. For me, the Titans are the team that makes it at 9-7. I believe that the 2 teams that just miss out for me are the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots, both at 8-8. Those are the 2 teams I think that are just on the cusp, but just don't make it.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting picks. Two of ours match actually. So my first wild card team is going to be the Denver Broncos, as you mentioned. That roster is just so stacked. So Drew Lock doesn't even have to be a superstar to make that roster work. If he's just mediocre, the Broncos probably make the playoffs, for being honest. He would have to have like a Nathan Peterman type implosion for the Broncos to actually go nowhere. But even then, I'm sure that would still probably find a way to make it. My third wild card team is actually the Tennessee Titans, as you mentioned. The roster construction there, at least as of right now, is pretty good. Jadeveon Clowney definitely helps that. Everything I mentioned about them potentially winning the divisions, while I have them in the wild card. But my second wild card team is actually the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay. I think especially even if Tyrod, again, I look at the Los Angeles Chargers very similarly to Denver Broncos in the sense that they have really nice roster construction with players like Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams when it comes back from injury, and the biggest question mark is really just the quarterback. And if Tyrod Taylor led the Buffalo Bills to the playoffs that one year, and I think he can more than likely do it again with the Los Angeles Chargers if it's not Justin Herbert. I think if it is Justin Herbert, they have a better chance of making it. That's just my opinion. But again, I had a really difficult time picking the third spot for the AFC just because that last tier is so close with teams like the Browns, the Steelers, and all the teams in like the AFC South. So I mean, those are my three, and yeah, so again, not too much not too much difference between our three.
I think that's absolutely fair. I agree with those picks. The Chargers will be a team to watch for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how their quarterback play is, and their roster is good enough that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess the NFC is where I have some more bold picks because let's be honest, the NFC can really go either any way.
I have
really.
some bold picks, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess we'll get started. The team I have winning the conference is the Dallas Cowboys.
Interesting. Okay.
I look at a team like the New Orleans Saints, who I was seriously considering to put here as the conference winner. And I just thought, you look at what the Cowboys have done over the offseason. They've shored up everywhere. Every position on the Cowboys roster has been improved over the offseason, pretty much. I can't think of one that hasn't. They lost Gerald McCoy. Fine, that sucks. Neville Gallimore will step in. He'll be fine. I think this team is really well built. They have a lot of upside, probably some of the most upside in the entire league, I would say. So I have the Cowboys going 12-4 and winning the NFC and the NFC East, even though I love the Eagles, who I'll talk about in a little bit. The NFC North will be a close one, but I have the Vikings going 10-6 and winning the division, not by much, but winning the division. The NFC North, in my opinion, will be the NFC East from last year, where all the teams are just a little bit behind the rest of the conference, and that one team that wins the division will get the best wildcard team. I think it's the Minnesota Vikings by a hair. I know they don't play that well against the Packers, but I think this year that'll change. A few things have changed in their organization, and I think they stack up well. They look different, and I think they'll show everyone that they have what it takes to actually be clutch in prime time. The NFC South, I think that the New Orleans Saints I think that's the easiest pick in the NFC, really, the Saints. Don't get me wrong, the Bucs and the Falcons are interesting teams, and they look good, but the Saints have been solid and division winners for a very long time. 3 years, to be exact. They have a really solid roster. Not a whole lot of big playmakers, like Michael Thomas and Cameron Jordan are the ones that come to mind there. Ryan Ramczyk too. But past that, you have just a really solid roster with a lot of really good playmakers, like maybe not playmakers, but guys that could do their job well, like Marshawn Lattimore, Marcus Williams, Alex Anzalone. That's on the defensive side. Teron Armstead, Alvin Kamara on the offensive side. Drew Brees is there too. It's just a really good roster. I know I got a little bit off track there. NFC West, I'll move on, is going to go to the 11-5 Seattle Seahawks. They're a really strange case in the sense that they are really, really, really good in some areas, like elite in some areas, and not very good, to be generous, in other areas. Their offensive line's probably one of, if not the worst in the league right now, but they're very, very good at quarterback. They're very, very good at wide receiver. They're very, very good in the secondary. They have Bobby Wagner. They'll be fine. They're this real boom or bust team where they have those huge players that'll have huge weeks, and then the rest of the team, if a team can neutralize those players, they'll run all over that team. So the Seahawks will have a few weeks where you're just thinking, what? This is not the Seahawks. But there are some weeks that you'll be thinking, this team's going to the Super Bowl. This team's winning the Super Bowl. So that's what I like about the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, so our division winners are completely the same. Seahawks, Vikings, Cowboys, and Saints. They're the exact same. I had a real hard... I was wrestling whether or not to put the Niners over the Seahawks, because I think it is going to be a battle between the Niners and the Seahawks, but I do have the Seahawks coming a bit ahead of the Niners. Our only area where we do differ is our conference winner, and this is a bit of a hot take. I'm just gonna warn you right now. It's a bit of a hot take, and I have my NFC winner is the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay. Interesting.
And Again, I understand how stacked that the Cowboys and the Saints are. They're probably on paper the best teams in the NFC. I don't disagree with that, but I think if you just look like I really like the pickup for Yannick Ngakoue for the Vikings. I think it really helped the defensive line a lot. Um, I think Dalvin Cook is going to have another really big year for the Minnesota Vikings. That is, if he doesn't hold out. Hopefully, I think get his contract negotiated, everything will go fine. But I just have a really funny feeling about the Vikings this year, especially with that division where it looks like it's really not going to be as competitive as divisions like, say, the NFC South or the NFC West or even maybe the NFC East, depending how the Eagles play. And I just think the Vikings have a real. I see a lot of potential in the Vikings for them to take a really big jump and potentially clinch the NFC this year.
I think it's absolutely fair to think that way. The way I look at the Vikings roster and the fact that they changed so much this offseason in the sense that they brought in what, like 12 or 13 or 14, no, I think they brought in like 16 different draft picks from this year's draft. And they really, it seems like they're rebuilding while they have their window open, which is really strange. You don't see that very often. That's the sense I get with the Vikings, which I love. So you bring in those big pieces like Yannick Ngakoue, Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, maybe not Dalvin Cook. He's probably leaving after the year. Daniil Hunter, Harrison Smith. You have those big core pieces there while you're kind of replacing the rest of the roster. So I'm really interested to see what the Vikings do this year. I'm a fan. I like it. Definitely winning the division. I just have difficulty putting them higher than 10-6 in a division where they're the Bears and the Packers twice a year.
That's fair.
So to the wild card spots, which will probably be somewhat similar. Maybe not. I don't know. This is the one that could really go anyway.
Right.
My first wild card spot goes to the 11-5 Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
I love this team. I'm just gonna stop there. I love this team. They are really, really good in a lot of areas. They had some season-ending injuries on their offensive line, but they've patched those up pretty nicely. Aside from that, I mean, yeah, there are a few injuries here and there. Jalen Reagor, Alshon Jeffrey, Carson Wentz, I think is questionable for week 1. They'll be fine. They'll be okay for the rest of the year. My second wildcard spot was a team that I couldn't leave off out of the playoffs. The San Francisco 49ers. I think they're not going to be as good this year, to be completely honest. I look at their roster makeup. I look at what happened to them this offseason. I think if Kyle Shanahan wasn't there, this team would not make the playoffs, to be completely honest. Their defense is really good. Their offense has a lot of bad injuries on it.
And a lot of question marks as well.
Yeah, basically every wide receiver they have is going to be like on crutches going into week 1. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good option, and I think this year will be a year where he will have the it's the year where he'll seem like he'll have to take that opportunity and that step forward, the one that everyone thought he would, but he really doesn't have the pieces around him to do it right.
Yep.
So I'm concerned for him because he is good. Seeing him at his best, he is a good quarterback. There's no way around that. Their running game will be potent for sure. Their offensive line is really good. George Kittle's there. That's all you really need to say. And their defense is stacked.
Yep.
So you can't leave them out of a playoff conversation. You really can't. And my last spot might be the controversial one. I don't think it's controversial to say this. Maybe comparing to who I'm leaving off this list, but I have the Atlanta Falcons going 9-7.
Interesting. Okay.
The Atlanta Falcons getting that third spot. They've always had it. There's been no change. The past few years they've dealt with injuries and they've gone like 7-9, 8-8, and just missed the playoffs. If they get a healthy year, which is a big if, I don't even want to say that. Even if they get some injuries, I still think that the depth is good enough and their core pieces are really, really good enough to make a run in the playoffs and to get them. I think they stack up pretty well to the Buccaneers, to be honest. Like the Buccaneers are going to be a tough team for sure. But I honestly, I said it in our team rankings about 2 months ago, and I'm going to say it again. I have a little bit more faith in the Falcons, marginally more faith in the Falcons than I do in the Buccaneers.
Okay. Interesting. So I don't really disagree with anything you said. The Niners I have as well, just with that defense and the running game alone. If they had the wide receiver options, if they were healthy, I'd probably would have put them over the Seahawks for this particular season. The Philadelphia Eagles, same thing. I'm really high on the Eagles. I think this team has a lot of upside. Whether or not they can actually like maximize their potential is a question mark. And again, a lot of that just had to do with their injuries and if not whether or not the players can stay healthy. But I really like the Eagles as well. The third wild card team I have the NFC is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Um, just be just because I do like the roster construction on the Bucks. It's a little bit better than the Atlanta Falcons. I'll touch on the Falcons in a little bit, but I am very high on not very high, but I'm high on the Buccaneers as well. I do think they're not going to do as well as people are as people are is expe- are. I do not think they're going to do as well as people say they're going to do. I think they're going to have a bit of a letdown this year, and I think because of that they're going to be the third wild cards spot in the NFC this year.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Brady gives this team a cap. With Winston, they didn't have a cap. Now they have a cap. They're not going to score as many points as they did last year. Plain and simple. They're not going to turn the ball over as much, but they're not going to score as many points. And I think when you're playing against the New Orleans Saints twice a year, when you're playing against the Atlanta Falcons twice a year, two teams that have the ability to run up the score, you're going to need the ability to score. And I just don't feel it with this team. Bringing in Leonard Fournette helped. I will admit it definitely helped. But I still think I think they're capped at 11-5. They can't do better than 11-5, and I have them going 8-8, which is on the lower end. Which is on the lower end of what they're going to do as a team because their defense is really good.
Okay.
I have the Green Bay Packers going 9-7 and just missing.
Okay. Interesting.
I think that they are probably the worst 13-3 team of all time last year.
Right.
They were good, don't get me wrong, but they had a lot of close games and a lot of lucky games.
Right.
And they got exposed big time by the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't really see AFC or NFC championship games go that lopsided. I don't think I've seen that in a while. Not since the Patriots and the Steelers in 2016.
Yeah. God, we love that.
But yeah, I think the Packers are still a really good team, but I think a lot of their players are playing well above their ability. And at the same time, Rodgers is regressing. And at the same time, they don't really have that many playmakers on the offense. So with all those things together, I feel like their window is slammed shut. Maybe it's still a little open, who knows? But I'm not really a fan of what I see with Green Bay. And I also have the Bears. I also have the Bears going 8-8, so tied with the Bucks.
Okay.
Still not making playoffs.
Right.
So that's kind of where I feel with that.
So who's your MVP, Max? Who do you think is going to be the most valuable player at the end of the season?
Before we get into that, why don't we go into some of our shocker teams? Because I think
let's do that.
Go into,
Good segue. Good. Okay, I like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell me your okay? So we both prepared teams that will they will change. They will do different from expectations. We have one for each conference that will exceed, and one from each conference that will not. And what's the opposite of exceed? Regress? No, that's not really the opposite of exceed. They will falter in the face of the expectations granted to them by the media, which is a long-winded way of saying they're going to be a lot worse than what the media portrays them to be.
Yes. So I'll go with my two teams I think will shock the world and be extremely good. Not extremely good, but a lot better than expectations. The first one is the Cleveland Browns. Yes. And a lot of this is just because it feels like a lot of the time the media is stomping on the Browns a bit and rooting for them to be bad. But I think, again, new offensive-minded head coach Kevin Stefanski. They have OBJ. They have Jarvis Landry. Another year, Baker Mayfield. The offensive line is still really good. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. On paper, this team is fantastic. And I think just seeing what Kevin Stefanski did in Minnesota is going to translate extremely well in Cleveland. I think Freddie Kitchens was not the coach to lead this team the last couple of years, and I think they finally got the guy that they needed at the helm to really guide this team where they need to go. So that's my first big pick. In the AFC, honorable mention goes out to the Cincinnati Bengals as well. I'm very high on the Bengals as well with Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, AJ Green, uh, Travis Boyd. I think that's his name. I'm not
Tyler
sure.
Boyd.
Tyler Boyd, not Travis. Um, I'm really high on the Bengals as well. And for the NFC, my shocking good team is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. That air raid offense with DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk, led by Kyler Murray, I think is going to be really good. The only thing that really concerns me is the offensive line. Obviously, it's a bit concerning, and their defense still is kind of concerning. But I just think, in terms of an offensive standpoint, the Cardinals are going to be extremely fun to watch. And my honorable mention for shockingly good in the NFC is the Atlanta Falcons. I am very high on the Atlanta Falcons. We've talked about this before. They have Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, Leo Jones. They have Todd Gurley coming in, who I don't think is that much of an upgrade over Devontae Freeman. But I think this is going to be a prove-it year for the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that they're going to take a really big step from what they did last year.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I like those picks. I think they're absolutely fair. I went a slightly different direction from you, but I do absolutely see where you're coming from. So I picked both of the two basement teams from this past year, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Washington football team. I picked those two teams.
That's another really good one. That's another really good one. Yep.
Yeah. So with the Bengals, at least, Joe Burrow. I mean, Andy Dalton, as great as much as I liked him, he did give this team a bit of a cap as he got older. As I kind of mentioned with Tom Brady, Andy Dalton had a limitation to his ability. Joe Burrow's coming in and he's going to be learning. So he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. He's going to be learning. He's going to be making plays and just trying to see what happens. He's going to try and build that rapport with AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, a very good wide receiver core. Young, too. Tyler Boyd's not that old. And the offense will be interesting to me. And the defense on the same coin is also one that's young and trying to get better, bringing in guys like Logan Wilson, like Akeem Davis-Gaither, bringing in Trey Waynes and Mackenzie Alexander to the secondary. I think this team will be interesting for sure to watch. They have a good mix of old veterans like Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, and some young players that can really shock people, all behind Joe Burrow, who, let's not forget, had probably the statistically greatest college season of all time, which in a pro-style offense at LSU. So at the very least, they'll be fine.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are low on the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the worst they could do is 5-11. So moving on to the Washington football team, they have a borderline top 10 defense in the league. Borderline because we did the rankings and I had them basically at 11th. But I think it's absolutely fair to say if you look at the pieces that they have and the moves that they've made, they've definitely committed to being this team that you're going to dread playing on Sundays just because you're going to have a tough time. Your running backs are not going to have fun.
They're so scary.
Yeah. Trying to run through Daron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, Jonathan Allen, having Ryan Kerrigan and Chase Young coming off the edge now, having Landon Collins in the secondary and some young corners that can really do some damage if you give them a chance. I like what this team is on the defensive side. Also, Ron Rivera's there. You're forgetting that they actually have a coach now. I don't understand why people have this as a bottom 3 team in the league. Ron Rivera is their coach. You can't forget that. The Carolina Panthers in 2014, 15, 16 didn't have that great a defense on paper, but damn, Ron Rivera made them work. So there's that for me. Offensively, again, Ron Rivera and Dwayne Haskins. I think Haskins will definitely take us. I think it would be hard not to take a step after what you did last year. So Dwayne Haskins will be fine. Maybe not Joe Burrow level, but he'll be fine. And the offensive pieces aren't necessarily there. But again, a good coach will help with that. So I think this team isn't as bad as people think they are. I don't think they'll be the worst team in the NFC, just like I don't think the Bengals will be the worst team in the AFC. If I had to predict who the 2 basement dwellers will be from each conference next year, for the AFC, I still would bet the New York Jets, honestly. I'd still put them there. Maybe the Dolphins, but I think it's the Jets. And for the NFC, the Carolina Panthers is the easy pick for me.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and that's fair. I think that's 100% fair. Especially those basement dwellers. Were those your shocking bad picks, or were those just your basement picks?
Those are my basement picks, not my shocking.
That's fine. That's fine. I agree with both those teams. My shocking bad teams. The first one is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just again because those expectations for them are very high, and I don't think they're going to be able to meet those. And the second one's not really fair, but just in terms of media perception, I do think this team is being put too high, and I think a lot of that has to do with the head coach. Despite everything that's happened, I still think the New England Patriots are being a bit overhyped in the media, just because Bill Belichick's the head coach. And I do think they're going to do a lot worse than people think this year without a lot of the defensive players that they lost earlier on in the year.
Fair. I also have the Buccaneers as my shocking bad pick in the NFC.
Yeah.
Just by the fact that people have this team as a Super Bowl contender, and I just don't see that.
Right.
But it might be a bit of a bias, but again, like I've said, Tom Brady gives them a cap. And teams that go to the Super Bowl don't have caps. Except for the Patriots 2 years ago, because Tom Brady gave them a cap. But the Rams also had a bigger cap, known as Jared Goff. My bad shocking team in the AFC is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't really think that. I think this one pretty much goes without saying. Big Ben will not be Big Ben again.
He'll be tiny Ben. He'll be minuscule Ben.
Microscope Ben is what they'll call him.
Microscope Ben, yes.
Which is pretty much what all of his sexual partners call him, I'm assuming. Wow. I guess that's why he has to resort to porn.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so continue. Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, he's an easy target.
He is.
Sorry, by easy I mean he's a wide target. But yeah, I look at this roster and I think everyone thinks they're the top defense in the league. I say they're barely a top 5 defense. Everyone thinks Minkah Fitzpatrick's the savior safety. I think he's a low top 10 safety.
Right.
Everyone looks at Juju Smith-Schuster in this receiving core and they say it's one of the best in the league. I say it's like higher middle of the pack, like 11th, 12th, 13th. Deontay Johnson's really good. Juju is a good player, but with number 1 cornerback attention, we've seen he's not as effective. I don't have a lot of faith in this team. They have to play the Browns and the Ravens twice a year, and I think the Browns match up to them very well. As you said, the Browns are going to shock people. They're going to be a really good team next year. I don't see that with the Steelers. I think the Steelers have a cap. As I've said before, that's my running theme. The teams that have a cap to their success are the teams that aren't going to do very well. I don't see the Steelers didn't have it before, but they do now because they're bringing back Big Ben.
Yep.
That's my shocking bad pick for the AFC.
So we'll just quickly breeze through the players that we think are going to be MVP: Opoy, Depoy, O'Roy, D-Roy, and C-Boy. Is that how that works?
I guess so.
C-Bapuy. Yeah. So I'll quickly give you my MVP, and my MVP this year is going to be Russell Wilson. I think Russ is going to have a really big year. Again, hard not to pick Mahomes just because how great he is during the regular season, how stacked that offense is. But I think if the Seahawks can manage to get the number 1 seed in the West, the number 1 seed in the NFC West, not the NFC in their division, relax everyone. I do think that Russell Wilson is going to get a lot of MVP votes, and I would not be surprised if Russell Wilson takes home the MVP this year.
Fair enough. So one thing that I've noticed about a lot of those MVPs in past years is that a lot of those players are players that had a really, really good year, like Cam Newton in 2015. Like Matt Ryan in 2016, like Adrian Peterson in 2012, like Lamar last year, like Mahomes in 2018. They're good players that just had a really, really good year. Russell Wilson's been playing at that level his entire career, basically. And we're coming into a year where where preparation has been sparse, and it's going to
Right.
be a really weird season in that regard.
Mhm.
And while all these players may be primed for a down year, if they are as volatile as they are, Russell Wilson isn't. He's going to
Right.
stay that consistent. I also have Russell Wilson as my pick. So
Hey, let's go.
I think this is the time, and also I'm high on the Seahawks as winning the division. I think Russell Wilson at this time, this is really his year in the sense that like Patrick Mahomes is going to come off that Super Bowl win, and he's going to go through that slump, which will be a little bit of a slump, and Lamar Jackson will go through a bit of a slump too, both because they have targets on their back.
Mhm.
But Russell Wilson doesn't really have that. I also considered Deshaun Watson just because like this is the first time where he really shows that he's in control of the offense, and without DeAndre Hopkins he can do really well, and I think he will do really well. But I think Russell Wilson gets it for me. My long shot pick, so a pick that's really not any of those players that we mentioned, that are front runners. My long shot pick for the MVP is Carson Wentz. I don't really think I need to say it. Why? He's so good. He was basically putting up the same numbers as Mahomes and those top tier quarterbacks last year, but with not practice squad receivers. Imagine what he can do with actual receivers, healthy for a year. Just imagine Carson Wentz he's an absolute specimen at the quarterback position. He is a top 5 quarterback in the league, and whenever somebody doesn't put him in the top 8, top 6, I'm shocked.
Right.
I'm collectively shocked. As an individual, I'm collectively shocked. Every part of me is in shock. So that's my long shot pick. I think he very well could be in that conversation because I do think the Eagles will do really well.
Yeah, just to quickly finish up the MVP segment. My long shot pick's Dalvin Cook. He's going to be the first non-quarterback to win MVP since Adrian Peterson, who was also running back for the Minnesota Vikings. How funny is that? But again, I think if the Vikings collect the number 1 seed in the NFC, which I think they will, Dalvin Cook's going to be at the front of that, and I think there's a very good chance if that is the case, he's going to win MVP. Offensive Player of the Year. This wasn't really too hard for me. I have Christian McCaffrey taking home Opoy. It may be a bit controversial, but I just think Christian McCaffrey is going to have another really, really good year. Maybe not as good as last year, but I think if he has anywhere near as good of a season as he had last year, he'll take it. Honorable mention goes out to Michael Thomas. Again, no need to current winner, and he's probably the best wide receiver in the league right now. And yeah, that's who I have for Opoy.
Mm-hmm. The Offensive Player of the Year is a stupid award. Like they gave it to the MVP a lot, so I don't really get it. It doesn't make much sense to me. I think didn't Lamar win it last year too?
It was Mike Thomas.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So I guess they try to diversify.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, Offensive Player of the Year, I'm picking Patrick Mahomes just because I think he'll still have a great year.
Okay.
Just not Wilson. If I had to pick a non-quarterback to be the Offensive Player of the Year, I would pick Ezekiel Elliott, just because I look at what the Cowboys are going to do, and I think Ezekiel Elliott will be an incredibly large part in that. He is unbelievable, Ezekiel Elliott. He's one of my favorite players in the league to watch. I've said that before, and I just think he will do a lot for the Cowboys. Even in a stacked offense, I think he'll still stand out. And my long shot pick, and this might be a little surprising, but I have Quentin Nelson here, and I think that's mostly because the Indianapolis Colts are going to run the ball a lot this year, and Quentin Nelson is going to be a large part in the Colts' success because of their ability to run the ball, because he is the best, probably the best run blocker in the league up there, and he seems to be getting better. And I can't imagine Quentin Nelson at his skill level right now taking a jump. I can't imagine that. But if he does, even if he gets a little bit better, I think he has to be in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year. And I know there's a bias at certain positions get it, some positions don't.
Quarterback. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But a guard at his level and his hype, like he's hyped up. all he needs is one like highlight reel block where he just absolutely pancakes somebody, and he's already thrust in that conversation. Easy.
Yeah, my long shot pick was also an Indianapolis Colts. It's Jonathan Taylor, the rookie running back. I think just with them potentially running him into the ground, there's a lot of potential there for him to take a really big step, a really big good first season.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive Player of the Year, I have Aaron Donald. Uh, yeah, do I need to say anything else? Aaron Donald's ridiculously is a monster for someone at his size, at his position. Not really much that needs to be said there. And my long shot is actually another rookie, and that's Chase Young of the Washington football team. As we mentioned, Washington has an absolutely stacked defense, and if Chase Young has a really good first year, there's potential for him to get the defensive player of the year. I'm not saying I'm not by any means saying it's likely with players like Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald, but I think that he at least has a chance.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a good pick. Aaron Donald is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a top 5 player in the league, probably a top 3, like just talent-wise player in the league based on what he's been able to do over the last few years. And he's still been productive.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I didn't go the Aaron Donald route, but I do think he'll be in that conversation. My pick for defensive player of the year is Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns.
Okay.
I don't know, like I said, everyone's super hyped up about Nick Bosa on the San Francisco 49ers. Myles Garrett got more sacks in like 2/3 of the season that he played than Nick Bosa got in his entire season.
Mm-hmm.
Like Myles Garrett is, I think, coming off the edge, he is probably just pound for pound talent wise number 2 in the league behind Khalil Mack.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe number 1. Right now, he's younger than Khalil Mack, so that's got to count for something. And I think Myles Garrett's primed for a huge year with this up and coming Browns defense that is pretty devoid of like top end talent. So Myles Garrett's going to be the one that's going to really prove himself, and he's going to have those opportunities to do that. But I look at what he's done over his career, and I see no reason why he couldn't do that. My long shot is another edge rusher because I do believe that there is a bit of a bias towards those flashy positions, and there's no flashier position on the defense than the guy that goes to sack the quarterback. It's Bradley Chubb in Denver. He had a really, really good rookie year. I think he had 12.5 sacks in his rookie year, and then he got injured last year, so he didn't play much. But he's really productive. He's on the other side of Von Miller, and he's an outside linebacker, so he does have to do some linebacking duties, but there he is coming off the edge. So as an offensive coordinator, what do? Stop Von Miller, who is a perennial candidate for offensive or defensive player of the year and probably one of the best defensive players that we've seen in the last 20 years? Or do you stop Bradley Chubb, the up-and-comer who's got just as much skill as Von Miller, if not being better right now? And I don't think that you can really double cover Bradley Chubb right now based on what's around this defense. I think Bradley Chubb's going to have a monster year. I'd be surprised if he got less than 14 sacks this year. He's going to be very good.
Yeah, so we'll quickly breeze through offensive defensive rookie. My offensive rookie is Joe Burrow. Quarterback bias. You mentioned probably arguably the best college year ever. I think this guy is going to be head and shoulders above the favorite this year. And my long shot to get it's going to be Jalen Reagor. Just part of that is just because of quarterback bias. He has a really good quarterback in Carson Wentz. I think that with him being probably the number 1 receiver going to this year, he's probably gonna have a really good year if he can stay on the field. Both of them can stay on the field. But I'm really high on Jalen Reagor, and I think there's potential for him to steal the offensive rookie of the year if he has a good year.
It's a good pick. Definitely a good offensive rookie of the year long shot pick. I like Jalen Reagor a lot, and he's in a good offense for it. My offensive rookie of the year pick is Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City. He will get more opportunities probably than any rookie besides maybe my long shot pick. And in an offense that's so friendly to any position, really, He's going to come in. He's handed the keys to be this offensive threat that can catch passes and run the ball behind a great offensive line, and he's going to have great blocking. And Andy Reid, who's going to scheme up some unbelievable things for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to do. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits like 1,700 yards on the ground this year and maybe 600 through the air. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him get to 2,200 yards from scrimmage this year.
Right.
He's just that good. He's been compared to Kareem Hunt, who did really well in this offense.
Mm.
I believe in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. My long shot pick is Cam Akers. I don't think this is a long shot, to be completely honest, because he is a running back. He is probably going to start week 1, and he'll be the starter for the rest of the year. I just don't think he's perceived to be on the same level as guys like DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor and even J.K. Dobbins. I think there's another tier where he's in as far as odds go. But I think in this offense that relied so much on Todd Gurley when he was there, Cam Akers has to step into that role. And, I mean, it's just a matter of whether or not he's going to do it. I have faith in him, obviously. I picked him in my fantasy league, but, I mean, we'll have to see. But I think with the opportunities will be there, and that's why I have him as my long shot.
Very nice. Defensive rookie, I have Chase Young. I mentioned it before, stacked front 9 in Washington. I think if that defense does as well as we think it is, Chase Young is going to get a majority of the votes. I don't really think there's any doubt about it. My long shot pick is Patrick Queen of the Baltimore Ravens. Patrick Queen is going to be a linebacker on arguably the most deep defense in the league. That's really all I need to say. If the Ravens do as well as we think they are, I think Patrick Queen's also going to get a lot of votes, not a lot of votes, but I think a lot of the people are looking at Chase Young to be the head and shoulders favorite for defensive rookie. So I think Patrick Queen's a long shot, if you will.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I didn't think Patrick Queen was enough of a long shot, so I didn't pick him.
That's fair.
But I do think he'll definitely be in consideration for it. I think he'll be so good this year. I think without a shadow of a doubt, Chase Young is going to win.
Exactly.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. I don't really think there are too many other players that'll compete with him for it, besides maybe if Jeff Okudah can become that shutdown corner right away, which I don't necessarily think, especially with Desmond Trufant there in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Isaiah Simmons will get enough touches or enough opportunities in that Arizona defense to be considered for it either. So I think Chase Young is just a very easy selection for me, and he's also surrounded by a lot of playmakers, so he will have opportunities to feed off of those players and really do some damage. My pick for my long shot, although I don't think it's going to be Patrick Queen, but I do think that there is a bias, like I said, towards the flashy positions, like the guys that get sacks. So my long shot is Kayvon Chason for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who will be rushing the passer alongside Josh Allen. So, I mean, like I said with Bradley Chubb, like, what are you going to do? Double Kayvon Chason? No, of course you're not going to do that. Double Allen? Good luck. Kayvon Chason will probably get 10 sacks this year on a defensive line that is very solid, even without Yannick Ngakoue. Chason basically was drafted to take his place, and look at it. He is taking his place right away. I think he'll be absolutely fine, and I think the second half of the year will be huge for him.
Right. That's fair. That's another really good pick. And to finish off our 2020 season preview, we're going to quickly talk about a comeback player of the year. Mine, I don't think there's any doubt who I wanted to go with. I'm going Cam Newton. This is a guy who's dealt with numerous injuries the last couple of years, especially last year. Didn't really play last year. Went through a whole bunch of stuff in the offseason. Was released by the Carolina Panthers. I think he's going to have an absolutely monstrous year with the New England Patriots, and I think if he can do that, he's going to be the comeback player of the year.
I wholeheartedly disagree with you.
Oh, interesting.
I had Cam Newton there. I did.
Okay.
He was the guy I was thinking of. But then I realized, wait, Alex Smith almost died.
Right.
And now he's playing.
That's fair.
I don't even care. It doesn't matter what anybody does, really.
I changed my pick.
Yeah.
I'm going my original pick. I'm going with Alex Smith.
Cam Newton's obviously the runner-up.
No,
for
us.
For sure.
Alex
Alex Smith is a lot of respect for what he did, and now he is on the roster. So really good for him. Like I'm cheering for him.
Oblivious as hell, everyone. Yeah, Alex Smith all the way.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for us for now. Yeah, it's kind of sad, eh? Look at Simon's face.
Yeah, sorry, I got a text message. Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna leave this one short without really any visuals or anything, just because we want this to get up as quickly as possible before the season starts.
A whole bunch of content coming your way. Don't worry.
Yeah. So thank you. This was a lot of fun. We'll be back soon. We'll be back very soon. We definitely have some stuff to do this semester, so we won't be able to keep doing this. But we will be back December, maybe end of the regular season. Maybe we'll come out with something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in. It was a very fun summer, and yeah, we'll see you next time, I guess.